A census taker in a rural area approached a farmhouse and rapped on the door. An elderly woman slowly opened the door, and he politely inquired about the number of children she had and their respective ages. She paused for a moment and then responded, "Well, let me think. First, there's the twins Sally and Billy, they're 18. Then there are the twins Seth and Beth, they're 16. And the twins Penny and Jenny, they're 14. The census taker, taken aback, remarked, "Wait a minute, it sounds like you had twins every single time." The woman chuckled and replied, Oh dear, not at all. There were countless times when we didn't get anything." A woman awakens in the middle of the quiet night and is surprised to find her husband absent from their bed. Concerned, she dons her robe and decides to search the house for him. Her quest leads her downstairs, and in the kitchen, she discovers her husband sitting alone at the table with a cup of steaming cocoa in front of him. His gaze is fixed on the wall, lost in deep thought, a sight that deepens her worry. She quietly observes him, wiping a tear from his eye. Filled with a mix of concern and curiosity, she steps into the room and gently inquires in a soft voice, "What's going on, dear? Why are you sitting here all by yourself in the middle of the night?" Her husband's eyes shift from the wall and meet hers. He tells her, "You know, it's exactly 20 years today since the day we first met." With a heavy heart, struck by emotion, she feels her own eyes welling up with tears, moved that he would remember such a detail. "I can't believe you remembered that," she responds, her voice filled with emotion. He continues with a solemn look. "Do you recall back then, 2 decades ago when we first started dating? I was just an 18-year-old young man, and you were 15, his voice brimming with nostalgia. The wife, deeply touched by his words, feels an overwhelming sense of affection for her husband, realizing how sensitive and caring he is. She sits down next to him and replies, "Yes, I remember that time." The husband seems to struggle for a moment, finding it hard to form the words as he deals with the emotions flooding back. "Do you remember that time when your father caught us together in the back seat of my car?" he asks, his voice just above a whisper, as memories of the past resurface. She nods, her voice soft and low. "I remember that too." The room falls silent for a moment before the husband exhales deeply, wiping another tear from his eye. Then, with a heavy sigh, he says, "And do you remember how he pressed the barrel of his shotgun against my face and issued me an ultimatum? He said I had to marry you right then and there, or he'd send me straight to jail for a very long time." She nods again. Her husband wipes away another tear and adds, "I would have gotten out today." A man decided to give a nudist colony a try for the first time. Filled with excitement, he confidently shed his clothes and began to explore the surroundings. As he wandered around, taking in the sights, a beautiful petite blonde passed by him, and instantly, he found himself experiencing an embarrassing situation. Noticing his evident arousal, the blonde approached him and inquired, "Did you summon me?" Puzzled, the man responded, "No, why would you think that?" She explained, "Well, you must be a newcomer here. Let me clarify. It's a rule that if you have an erection, it's taken as a sign that you're signaling for me." With a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she gently took his hand and guided him to a secluded spot beside the swimming pool, where they intimately connected. Feeling more adventurous, the man decided to explore more of the colony's amenities. He ventured into the sauna, but as he settled in, he accidentally let out a loud fart. Almost immediately, a massive and very hairy man emerged from the steamy fog. Approaching with a stern look, he asked, "Did you beckon me?" Taken aback, the newcomer replied, "No, what are you talking about?" The large man rumbled, "You seem new. Let me tell you, in this place, if you let out a fart, it's considered as you calling out for me." Without waiting for a reaction, the burly man swiftly turned the newcomer around, bent him over, and had a rather intimate moment with him. Shaken and bewildered, the newbie limped back to the colony's front office, where a cheerful naked receptionist greeted him with a smile. She asked, "How can I assist you today?" Huffing and exasperated, the man exclaimed, "Here, take my membership card. I don't want any more, and you can keep the $500 I paid for it." The receptionist, trying to be understanding, replied, "But sir, you've barely spent any time here." And you haven't even explored all our facilities." Catching his breath, the man exclaimed, "Look, lady, I'm 68 years old. I might get an erection once in a blue moon, but I definitely fart at least 55 times a day." One day I was in my city and I had gotten to know this homeless guy over the last couple of months. He was a great guy, always with a smile on his face. Sometimes he'd ask for money, and yesterday, as luck would have it, he did. I looked into my wallet and said, "Tell you what, all I got is a $1.10 bill, but if you go down to that gas station and buy me a Snickers bar and bring it back to me, you can keep the change." He thought about it for a moment and then agreed, saying, "All right, bet." With a sense of determination, he shuffled off towards the gas station. So there I was, standing at the bus stop, eagerly waiting for his return, anticipating that delightful chocolatey treat. Time seemed to crawl by, but eventually, about 15 minutes later, he came back with a bag in his hand. To my pleasant surprise, he handed me not one but 2 Snickers bars. I was a bit taken aback and said, "Hey man, you only needed to get me one. You would have had more change that way." He looked at me, grinning, and said, "Oh no, it's cool, man. I just stole them." In that moment, I realized I had made a deal with a snack bandit. I got my $10 worth in the form of stolen Snickers bars. It was a win-win, in a way. I thanked him, chuckled at the absurdity of it all, and we both enjoyed our unexpected Snickers feast. After all, they say, laughter is the best snack. One lazy Sunday morning, the whole family gathered for breakfast. While they were enjoying a delicious meal, something unusual began to happen. While they were buttering pancakes and pouring syrup over them, the parents winked slyly and mischievously. Their eyes met, and it was clear that something was about to happen. The gleam in their eyes spoke for itself. They were in the mood to be alone. Without missing a second, the wife abruptly got up from the table, pushing the plate away, and announced, "I have lost my appetite. I will not finish. I will go to rest." With that, she hurriedly left, leaving her breakfast half-eaten. The husband, without wasting a minute, hastily finished the remains of breakfast and jumped up from his chair. Without a word, he followed his wife up the stairs and disappeared into their bedroom. The children who were left at breakfast were completely confused. The older child, the more curious of the two, turned to the younger one and said, "Hey, something strange is going on. We need to find out what's going on." Without hesitation, the younger brother calmly put down his fork and decided to investigate. A few moments later, the younger child returned to the kitchen, where the older one was waiting impatiently. The eldest child asked, "Well, what did you see? What's going on there?" The younger brother casually sat back down at the table, picked up a fork, and began to devour breakfast with incredible speed. Surprised and puzzled, the eldest child asked, "Why are you eating so fast? What's going on there?" The younger one, with fear in his eyes, replied, "Up there, Dad punishes those who don't finish their meals in bed." A man was on his way to a local bar, looking forward to a relaxing evening. As he approached the entrance, he encountered an unexpected obstacle: a nun holding a sign that read, "Alcohol is evil." The determined sister wasted no time in launching into a passionate tirade about the perils of alcohol. She declared, "Alcohol is evil. Alcohol is the devil's tool." The man stood there, attentively listening to the nun's fervent sermon. She continued, "What would your parents think?" This particular statement struck a chord with the man as he contemplated what his late parents might think about his drinking habits. He explained to the nun that both of his parents had passed away, and he genuinely had no idea how they might feel about his choices. Despite the man's somber reflection, the nun pressed on, tirelessly enumerating the evils of alcohol. She even went as far as to suggest, "Your parents are cursing your name from hell." This was the point where the man's patience began to wear thin. He finally decided to confront the nun with a question of his own. Well, how do you know how bad alcohol is? He challenged her. Have you ever even tried a drink before? The nun, in a moment of self-reflection, admitted, Well, I guess I have never tried it. The man seized the opportunity to make a deal with the nun. He offered to buy her a drink with a condition. If she didn't like it, he'd swear off alcohol for good. The nun, seeing the sincerity in his offer, agreed to the terms. Together, they ventured into the bar, drawing more than a few curious glances from patrons. The man, feeling rather amused by the situation, asked the nun what she would like to drink. With a sense of uncertainty, she turned to him and inquired, What do ladies usually drink? To this, the man responded, Gin. He promptly ordered a gin for the nun, and she hesitantly took a sip. To everyone's surprise, she admitted that she quite liked it. After savoring the flavor of the drink, the nun suddenly had a change of heart. She decided it was time to leave the bar and embark on a journey of repentance for her own sins. As the man watched the nun make her hasty exit, he couldn't help but feel a bit bewildered by the peculiar encounter. He turned to the bartender and explained, You won't believe the strange conversation I just had with a nun outside. And that night, he probably shared a laugh about the unexpected twist with his fellow bar patrons. Once in a charming little Bulgarian town, there was a train driver named Dmitri. From the time he was a little boy, Dmitri's dream was to drive a train. He had a passion for making that locomotive go as fast as humanly possible. And he couldn't imagine a more thrilling job. One fateful day, Dmitri was at the helm of his beloved train, and he decided to live life in the fast lane, or rather on the fast track. He pushed the throttle to the max, and the train roared forward like a speeding bullet. However, as it hurtled down the tracks, it became clear that Dmitri's need for speed was a bit too much for the train to handle. In a catastrophic collision of steel and chaos, a horrifying crash occurred, and tragically, one passenger lost their life. Dmitri's reckless escapade landed him in the court of law, and the verdict was swift and severe. He was found guilty of gross negligence and sentenced to death by electrocution. As the day of execution approached, Dmitri, always one for a quirky sense of humor, requested a rather unusual last meal, a single banana. The day arrived, and Dmitri was strapped into the electric chair. The executioner threw the switch, and for a moment it seemed like the end. Sparks flew, smoke filled the room, but inexplicably, Dmitri emerged unscathed. A failed execution, they concluded, was a sign of divine intervention according to an old Bulgarian law, and so Dmitri was granted a second lease on life. Dmitri unbelievably managed to claw his way back into the driver's seat of a train. You'd think the near-death experience would have taught him a lesson, but no, he was back to driving with reckless abandon, determined to push the limits yet again. Predictably, another accident occurred, this time claiming 2 lives. The trial felt like déjà vu, and the verdict was déjà doom. Dmitri found himself back in the executioner's chair. For his last meal, he requested 2 bananas, just to keep the tradition alive. The electric chair scenario played out once more. Sparks flew, smoke billowed, but Dmitri was untouched, and he walked away, much to everyone's shock. This twist of fate baffled the authorities. Nonetheless, Dmitri was reinstated as a train driver once more. He was the living proof that some people just don't learn from their mistakes. And as you might have guessed, it didn't take long for him to be at the helm of yet another crash, this time claiming 3 lives. The courtroom was filled with tension as the verdict was delivered, death by electrocution once more. The day of execution arrived, but this time the executioner had had enough. He refused Dmitri's request for 3 bananas, declaring, "I've had it with you and your banana antics. We're strapping you in and doing this now." Against protocol, they strapped Dmitri into the electric chair without a last meal. The switch was thrown, sparks flew, and smoke swirled, but to the executioner's disbelief, Dmitri emerged unharmed. The executioner, stunned, turned to Dmitri and stammered, "How is this even possible?" Dmitri, with a mischievous grin, responded, "Oh, the bananas had nothing to do with it. I'm just a bad conductor."